Well, today we have a special day for fathers. Happy Father's Day to all of you. I know we've already said that, but we want to encourage you dads this weekend. I was just telling these individuals that are behind me, they're going to introduce themselves to you in just a moment, that if we were to take all of the answers that they've given to all of these questions, they make the perfect dad. So these four make the perfect dad. So dad, if you're out there and you're listening and you're saying, oh my goodness, I wish I could do that, or I'm failing, I'm doing that, realize it took 4 men to make one good dad. We're all imperfect. We all are. But we can all grow. And so this weekend, that's what we want to encourage you in is how can you grow in being a dad? And so as these guys share their story and the way that they approach fatherhood, I hope it encourages you and you're able to take something out of this weekend that you can apply into your own life and just increase who you are as a father. So we're going to get started by a little introduction. Over here on my far right, the stage left, we have Victor. Victor, why don't you introduce yourself, then we're going to go down the line.
Yes, thank you, Pastor. My name is Victor, Victor Fagbola. I'm a dad. I have 3 children. My first one is in college, actually. My second one is going to college this September. I'm super excited about that. My third one is still in middle school. I've been a member of BP Church for about 10 years now, and I'm excited to talk to you today about what I've learned being a dad.
I'm Chris Richards. Attend BP Church here since I think about 2004. I have a wife and 1 child. He's 6 years old. He just graduated grade 1 today. So somewhat of a younger child. I have 2 old dogs who are like 12 and 13. And yeah, I've been married for 14 years now.
I am Samson Anifowose. I have 1 wife, and I have 3 children. And I'm a granddad too. I have 5 grandkids. I've been attending BP's church for the past, 20 years. Since I've been in Canada, this has been my home, and here we are.
And I'm Ron Smith. I've been attending BP Church for about 15 years now. Am married to Wanda and have 2 boys, Matthew, who graduated yesterday, and Nathan. And we're all actively involved one way, shape, or form or another.
So our first question that we have for our dads is, what is the greatest lesson your dad has ever taught you? And so, Ron, we're going to start with you on this one.
Thanks, Mark. So, yeah, my biggest lesson from my dad, my biological father actually, taught me the value of preparation. He and my mom had been separated for many years whenever he just abruptly passed away, and his personal affairs weren't in the best of order. So it took us weeks and months even to get a will and creditors taken care of and things like that. So from that very early age, I said to myself, okay, I need to make sure that my affairs are in order, so if someone ever had to do that with my things, they would have a better idea of where everything's at. So I'm not perfect at it, but definitely I have most of my house in order.
Well, it's so important for us to be able to do that too, for us to get things ready and to take the time to teach our kids. Mm-hmm. Your dad taught you by default, yeah. But those are lessons that we need to take and move forward. Victor.
Yeah, so for me, one of the things I want to share today is that I lost my dad at a young age. And as a last of 5 children, I want to say most of the lessons I took, I got them from either my uncle who raised me or even or my mom. However, I just want to say one of the things I noticed in all of them is he taught us to be united. Mm-hmm. He taught us that unity is very important. Today, I've been in Canada for 10 years, and I think from time to time we will organize a bridge conference. We'll talk about our families. We'll talk about our children. We'll pray for them, and I think it's made us really strong. Thank God they're all believers as well, and I'm very excited about being part of that family.
So family unity within the family was huge.
Correct, for him.
Ah, very good. Chris.
So with my dad wasn't or isn't really necessarily the type to sit down and say, I'm going to teach you a lesson, but I learned, I think, mostly through his behavior, and I didn't want to have the standard church answer, but in thinking about it, it is his commitment to God. I always remember my dad, he's always had a Bible. There were various Bibles around the home, different versions, and he would study something in the King James and then in the NIV. So just seeing that, and he did talk to me about God, but I think more so even just what I would see, and all his books were always Christian books, and he was just always trying to grow spiritually. And then just the ministry he was involved in. He's always been, even to this day, is always involved in ministry, and he manages to find kind of the smaller ministries that really need someone that no one else is willing to do. So I've always admired that, and that's one of the best things I've learned from him.
So in that sense, it's that phrase of a lot of times what you learn is caught, not taught.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So by modeling it in front of you, you're now able to model that in front of your boy.
Yeah, and I'm so glad, because I mean, I'm sure some people tell their kids, you need to pray, you need to do this, you need to read your Bible, and if they don't see it, they're not gonna believe it as much.
Yeah. Samson.
Yes, with me, the greatest lesson I had from my dad, because everything my dad does, he always honored God. In everything, he put God ahead. And he always asks us, we children, that in life, the only way you can succeed is to put God first. And when you see people that are in troubles or you see their sufferings, do not neglect them. You just have to do something. Don't be shy of doing it. Go for it. Don't be indifferent. And try to lead by example. And this is very important, because I was small, but I hang out around my dad a lot, and I can see him doing his leadership skills. And actually, my dad was a big administrator in Nigeria, and I knew one way or the other, maybe I will, and which is what I'm doing today.
Again, it's that modeling. So it's so important for dads to realize kids are watching.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything he does, I try to do. I'm very handy person. My dad is an electrical engineer, and he works at a big research institute in Nigeria. And on the weekends, when my dad is home, nobody's going out, because he starts doing things, electrical rewiring. I've never learned the trade. I rewired my basement.
Yeah.
And my daughter can do a lot. Some of my kids can do a lot because they see me doing stuff at home.
Right.
Because I learned all these things from him.
In Canada, there was an old commercial with Canadian Tire. And it was a dad under a sink trying to do something, and a son came to him and was like, "Dad, can I help? Can I help?" And he's like, "No, go away, go away." And the idea was, "No, I want to get this done." And finally, the dad just kind of stops and says, "Yes, son, let me show you how to do this." And so it's taking that time for our kids. Second questions that we had this weekend is, what has been your greatest joy in being a dad? What's been your greatest joy in being a dad? Samson, we're going to come back to you on that first.
Okay. Yeah, my greatest joy of being a dad comes from being a dad. Because me, my children, I try to train them the way I was trained. And at the same time, because if you look at the book of Proverbs, Proverbs 22:6, which says, teach your children, start them off the way they should go. Even when they are old, they will not turn away from it. I think this is fundamental in bringing up children. Very, very fundamental. Because sometimes when we are growing, when kids are growing, especially when they're in the high school, they try to veer off the direction. But once the principle is there, they will always remember their God. And they will surely definitely come back. So it is very, very important that we as parents, we start teaching our children right from the early age the way of God.
Yeah.
And the children, they see what we do in our secrets. Even if we are faking it outside, they see what we do in our secrets. And I think it's very, very important for every parents to ensure that what they believe in, they teach their children.
Yeah, so good. Ron, we're going to jump to you.
Well, very similar to what Samson said, everything about being a dad brings me joy. It's not always easy, and the joy sometimes comes from unexpected ways, but it took me a while to become a father, so I think maybe part of that, I have a little extra appreciation for the value of children in your life, and both the boys and myself, we have some great fun together. They're excellent companions. We're always up for a laugh, but at the same time, whenever a lesson needs to be taught or we need to have a conversation that maybe is a more difficult conversation, we always can have those too. So, and even in those types of scenarios, which are very rare, that brings me joy as well, to know that I can help mentor and model the behavior of what a good Christian father looks like. And that's something I never had growing up. So that also brings me satisfaction, just to be able to provide that for them.
That's awesome. You know, one of the passages of scriptures that you had mentioned is the Psalm 127, 3-5, and
Right.
I thought it was so cool. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, the verse honestly says it all. Children are a heritage from the Lord, and I think that if we, as dads, as parents even for that matter, really truly believe that children are a gift and we treat them as such, that changes the dynamic that we have as parents. And I know it's tough sometimes. You know, we've all been there where, you know, they're not listening, or, you know, you want them to go in a different direction than what they're going into. But at the end of the day, they are a wonderful gift.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to remember that, but
Yeah.
they are a wonderful gift. Vic, we're going to jump over to you.
The Bible says in Proverbs 23, 24, 25, the father of a righteous child has great joy. A man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave birth to you be joyful. Lots of great opportunities for me to say today that, you know, everything they do makes me very happy. But I want to share and something that happened recently. My daughter graduated from high school just this week, and that day I would say is one of the happiest days of my life. I feel so blessed. I feel so proud, and I feel so special. Not that hers is any better or any different from that of my son who graduated last year. Those days are important to us as dads. You would all agree. I mean, those are the days that I will go to them and pray for them and let them know how proud I am of them, how blessed I am that God gave them to me as a father, and I speak word of affirmation into their lives. That's really I know a lot of people that haven't gone through that will when you go through it you understand.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that day too.
I'm sure you are.
You have it,
Not
yeah.
that I want them to grow up any quicker than they already are growing up, but just coming through COVID, we are just glad that school is over as of today, I think it is. So we're very, very, very happy about that. Chris, you're a young fella. He's much younger than the other guys that are here. Where are you on this?
Yeah, like everyone said, it's just such a joy to be a dad. And similar to Ron, I was a bit later in the game. Almost embarrassed or ashamed to say, but my wife and I, when we got married, we didn't know if we wanted kids. And we kind of said we need at least a few years to be married, to enjoy ourselves, have fun. And it's something I remember going for long walks in the dog park debating. And of course, I mean, you hear people say it all the time, but once you have kids, then it's such an amazing thing, and it makes me scared to think, what if I decided not to? He just brings so much joy. I mean, part of that is his personality too, but I mean, he's just such a happy, fun-loving guy, always likes to have fun. He likes jokes, pranks, all that kind of stuff. And of course, we can have some serious times too. I just love when, his curiosity, the questions he has. Sometimes he asks some hardcore spiritual questions that I don't have the answers to. But it's just fun and watching him soak it up. I was really proud actually this morning. I was on a meeting on Zoom, and my wife was out at work, and he was there, and he was complaining that he had a really bad headache, and he was almost crying. And I was like, oh, I'm in this meeting, and I don't know what to do. And next thing I could see him in the living room walking with his hands folded, and I knew he was praying. And it's just such a nice moment, such a proud dad moment. Like, I couldn't be for him there right there, and his thing was, yeah, I'm going to pray. And I mean, he's only 6 years old, so just, there's no greater joy than that, really.
Those are priceless moments.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah. Those are ones you wish you had your camera going and
Yeah.
say, I want to grab this forever. Oh. Our next question is, what's the most challenging thing about being a dad? Samson, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, thank you. For me, the most challenging thing is, actually I have to start this way. I had my first 2 kids while I was in the university. I should be between 21 and 22. So it was very challenging because I still regarded myself then as a boy. And thank God I was married to my wife. We said, okay, I would like to have a kid. I was thinking to have 1 kid. So we had one, and we are being sustained from back home. From my mom used to pay for everything, and my wife's parents supported us too. So along the line, there was a program the federal government changed in Nigeria. It's called SAP, Structural Adjustment Program, which causes devaluation of our currency. Nigeria currency used to be a local 1 naira, almost equivalent of $2 US. Ooh. Then when I was away, so they call us petrodollars in Europe, and we were living good. So things started to happen. We had this kid. Sometimes I will wander off. I bet I play a lot with Alex. Alex probably, I thought I was a kid myself. Like every single blessed day when I'm coming back from school, I will make sure I buy him a toy. Our house was full of toys. So when things change, then I know I have to start doing something. So I get a job as a radio talk host show every Thursday. And on weekends, I work as a DJ in a club, in a very big club in Florence, Italy. So, it was big for me because I come back, buy things for Alex. We play a lot, we play hard. And that still reflects in my children's life today because we're an open family. Like, they know everything about me, not now, since then, since when they were small. Like, my kids, they have access to my card machines, nothing as if I mixed. They know everything about the passwords. So, like, it's because we built a relationship, that is it's so close among us that we're like friends. Yeah. Like all the music I listen to, you see my children listen to the same music, because like we're growing up together. Yeah. And so that's how things were. And I used to sometimes, kind of we go party. I take my kids with me, and my wife was good at watching them so that, they don't do stuff. And, that is one of my greatest joy of having children, at a younger age. And it helps us, above all, solidify our marriage. Because, as I said, like sometimes I think as I'm still single, I was the only one that is married out of all my friends in the school. And sometimes I will go elsewhere, like come back late, but we talk about it and we get over it. We were so young that we have a pastor that, our church pastor that will always come over, and I was pretty angry about it. I said, what is he looking for? This guy will just come, because I think I need to have my life. We just asking, is your wife okay? Is your kid okay? At Christmas, they give us presents. Like, it was beautiful. It was, when I look over, I will do it again. Yeah, so it was beautiful.
So, Ron, for you.
Well, one of the biggest challenges is there is no instruction manual. And for somebody who likes to have a plan and follow a process, that was by far the biggest learning lesson for me. I still remember in the early days when Matthew was first born, I couldn't even tell you how many years it had been before he was born that I changed a diaper. And at that time, maybe only changed 2 or 3 in my entire life. So Wanda was very patient and very good at giving me instructions to move me along the line. But as the ages and stages have moved on, there's similar challenges. And in my stage of life now, all my parents are gone, so I'm essentially, I guess, the patriarch of the family, and so I don't have, many people up my family line to be able to talk to about certain things. So a lot of it is making it up or talking to, good friends who can offer advice from time to time. But in all of that, I want to be the very best dad I can be. I want to be the very best husband I can be. I want to show them examples of both of those things so they grow up to be, the men that I would want them to become. And all the while, I'm still trying to figure it out myself. So it's been a very interesting dynamic. I've had an unbelievable amount of growth over the last 17 years since Matthew was born, 18 almost. And I wouldn't change it for the world, but definitely periods of challenge. And even still, I'm figuring things out.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of us guys would probably have that same answer that there's no manual for this. Yeah. Problem is, there's a million books out there on this. We just don't read them. In reality,
I've read a few of them just for the record.
Now you have. Now you have. Yeah. But if you guys are just like me, when Andrea was pregnant, when my wife was pregnant, there was a number of books that she brought home about parenting. And what it meant to be a parent and what it meant to have a baby and everything else. She read every one of them, cover to cover. She told me what was in the books because I didn't read the books. But that's kind of the man's default, right? It's like, oh, there's no manual, but there is a lot of manuals. And then as we go along, like you said, we start to discover, you know what? There is answers out there. Mm-hmm. And I just need to take that opportunity maybe to watch something like this or to investigate myself, which you guys, I know all of you do now, but I bet you when you first got married, reading a book about raising a child was probably one of the furthest things from your mind. Probably. Most men. Some guys, they lead the way, but most guys kind of default to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Number 4 is, how do you take time for your spouse and other relationships amid busyness and having kids and work? One of the things that I find with a lot of individuals is a lot of men that are fathers, it is a real balancing act. How do we balance all of these different things in our lives, our wife, our kids, our work, and then even ourselves? And so, Chris, we're going to start with you on this one.
Okay. First, I have to acknowledge that I certainly don't have this down pat. I was telling my wife, are you okay with me answering this question? I think for me, it was kind of looking at it now. I think I poured so much into being a dad that I don't want to say ignored, but definitely did not spend as much time with my wife. We spent time together with our son, but we definitely lost some of that quality time. And kind of one of the things for us when our son was born, we don't have much family in the city. We were lucky enough, we were involved in the youth group, so we had a ton of appropriate, good youth that could babysit for us. But unfortunately, Lincoln was the kind of child, he didn't want to be away from us. He needed either his mom or his dad. And sometimes in church, I see people pass their children around. We couldn't do that. He needed to be with mom or dad. So our families come and visit from Newfoundland. My wife's parents come up for almost 2 months in the summer, but even in the first few years, because he didn't really know them, I mean, if we tried to take a night out, we'd literally have to sneak outside the door. I remember one time my mom texted me and after we left, and he said he just threw up. He was just so out of sorts. So it was definitely tough. So we tried to spend family time. In the last few years, it's been a little bit better, and I would just encourage people to take that time to, even at nighttime, it's tempting sometimes when you're done with the parenting to just do your own thing, but just take that time to talk, to check in. And yeah, it's important if you can take advantage of one thing that me and Charlene have done over the last few summers is we've taken a few days off and still sent him to daycare. And we feel a little guilty, but you need that, just to go to a movie, go out for lunch, something like that. So, and it's also tough because I think your other relationships suffer. Relationships, say, with other men, other friends, is a little easier because I can leave my son with my wife. So I try to do that too, because you need to make time for a life for yourself, because I've thought of this. You pour so much into your kids, and then by the time they move out, you still need to have a life too. So
Yeah. It's a balancing act there for that, for sure. Vic.
So, Chris, like you, work-life balance is definitely a work in progress, and I'm sure most of us men would agree to that. As a matter of fact, my wife would say, as a father, I give you a 9 out of 10. As a husband, I give you more of a C, like a 7. and I'll question. I said, at least make it a B plus. and even within the kids, one would say, which one is your favorite? It's funny how we still had that conversation today. Now, I just want to say that when my son went to college last year, it created a void in the family, in their life. I would go into his room and basically make his bed again almost every week, and he's not living in that room. I have a daughter who's leaving this year. I already know that that is going to create a shift in the dynamics of our family. But I want to thank God for the time that they were young, that I had the opportunity of doing something in their lives. I chose to coach their basketball teams because I know that the little time that I can have with them as they go through those stages in life is very crucial. Whether it's in me driving them to practice 5 a.m. in the morning, blistering snow, and we're talking about life. We're talking about basketball. We're talking about social skills. We're talking about how to respect their teammates. Or whether it's in driving to Kelowna or driving to BC for a tournament every other weekend, or flying with them somewhere. We spend those time together as a family because, again, my work involves lots of travel. So whenever I'm not home, I try to just make up whenever I'm in town.
Right.
So I drop everything else. But for my wife, one of the things that we found out at least for us now, that we're at that stage in life where we're going to go into a period where they're going to be gone. And we're looking forward to those things you talk about, Chris, where we can maybe take a vacation without them and just, we're looking forward to that. But for now, what we do is we communicate very well. My wife and I, when we're talking about issues, life issues, it's basically, turn off the TV, close the door, turn off your phone, and we basically, I listen, she listens to me, we have time for each other. So that's the other thing I found out, and I discovered this in my wife. She loves cooking, and I'm sure she'll be watching this. She loves cooking, and I love when she's cooking because she makes great meal. And because I identify that, what I do is I make myself that man in the kitchen who is picking up at everything. So she drops the spoon, I'm the one who's washing it right away. She picks up a spice, I'm the one who's taking that spice and putting it back up. And we're talking, we're doing something together. Of course, you wish you could, maybe, have the time to take her somewhere. She'll tell me, when are you going to take me to, on a vacation to Jamaica or something, just both of us. Yeah, I'll say next year, God will provide. But so to me, it's that work-life balance is, it's a bit challenging for me because of my kind of work. But whenever I'm not doing work, whenever I'm doing family stuff, it's drop everything else and I give that to them. I'll tell you one thing my daughter told me recently, and I'm really excited about that. She said, Dad, that's the one that's going to college. Said, I'm going to remember you for all the time you've been there for me. Whether it's, school practice, there's no other parent there, but you're the only one there. She said, I'm going to remember all those things about you. And those are very emotional times for me.
For me too. I remember my mom picking me up after school almost every night. after whatever sport I was in. Great time driving home with my mom. Stuff like that. My dad coming out to events when he could get there. Those are important moments. We might think they're just a drive or they're just a, oh, I got to go pick them up. But probably for me, one of the greatest times I have talking to my kids is every morning, because I've driven them to school. Every morning they've been going to school.
Oh, really?
And so for me, it's driving them to school every morning. Sometimes it's a little bit onerous to do it, but it's like, hey, this is my time to talk.
Pastor Mark, I was just going to say that sometimes I don't want to wake up in the morning and do those things. I'm like, I hope you will remember this when you grow up one day and become a doctor.
Yeah, that's right.
But the truth is, those are periods that in my life that I know have impacted something into their lives.
Yeah, I love those moments. I love them. Number 5 is, how have you changed while raising your children? What has God the Father taught you about being a father? And Samson, we're going to come back to you for this.
Yeah. For me, as time passed by, raising up my kids, so obviously my character starts to change. I'm being reformed. I've become the responsible father.
You're no longer the playmate.
I'm no longer the playmate. And like some people who saw me, who knew me, maybe like 30 years ago, I met one of my old students, and I was just discussing with him online. Then I said something about the Word of God. He said, "You, Samson?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a changed person. With God, everything is possible." Those are the days when we are students, It's no longer Samson of old days. And my character changed purposely because of my children. Because I want them to see what I do. And as such, I need to live a responsible life so that they can emulate the same character, and they can try to do same for someone after them. So my character seriously has changed by growing my children and by being responsible in life, actually, because we work, we do stuff. And I teach my children the same thing, like, you have to think, you have to know what you do, because, life, things are not easy. You have to be proactive in everything you do, because you don't know what's going to happen. Look, right now we're in the COVID crisis. A good father supposed to be able to make that little provision. We don't eat with our 10 fingers. So it's important for me. And but before, I live a carefree life. Now I know I have a wife. I have to make time for her. When she's not happy, I know I have to ask her. So I think those things is important for me now, which I'm doing. But these are things I wouldn't do like 20, 30 years ago.
Things you've learned along the way.
Yeah.
And priorities have changed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ron, we're going to jump to you.
Sure. Well, every now and then, if I see the boys are struggling with something, or if they're down for some particular reason, I'll remind them that they have the unfortunate privilege of seeing me now and knowing me now after many, many years of personal development, spiritual development, marriage. Those things all, they change they shift your character. And it's unfortunate for them because, again, they're not seeing me as I was as a 14-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 27-year-old. So part of the process is absolutely evolution, and there's no doubt, and Wanda can tell you, I've changed radically in the 23 years that we've been married. Some of it is being a husband, some of it's being a father, but the great majority of it is getting to know my father better and understanding what he expects of me and what I expect of myself because of the understanding of knowing what he expects from me. And it was interesting, even going through this exercise, just doing some research on God as a father, the fatherhood of God. And we could spend an hour talking about, the characteristics of God. As you say, I'm actually proud to be 25% of the perfect dad, because I know in his eyes, there's no way I could even come close to measuring up. But, when I look at things like provider, protector, comforter, creator, the compassion, the mercy, the blessing, and on and on and on. We forget sometimes that he has that naturally. We don't have that naturally. We have to learn and earn and grow. And I hope that, and I've said enough times to the boys, you have to go through this journey as well. Like, I'm here to help you and to guide you and to mentor you and, a soft place to land when needed. But we all go through that character development.
Yeah. It's a continuous for all of us. Chris?
I think one way I've changed is that, and often you hear women saying this, but I placed a little bit less importance on my career. When it was time for him to start going to daycare, when my wife was finishing her mat leave, as I referenced before, he had a hard time being away from us. So I actually applied for a position lower than I was in, and I remember my boss was like, "Why are you doing this?" But I work in child protection, so I mean, typical hours 8:30 to 4:30. But as I was an investigator at the time, I could get a call at 4:15, and you'd have to go and be out until that child was safe. Meanwhile, your own child is home without dad. So I took a job where I could just be working from the office, and I did that for about a year. And it was so nice to have that year to pick him up from day home every day and have that time with him. And after a year, I went back, but I was glad to be able to at least take that 1 year. And now my career, I guess, is back on track. But I definitely don't worry as much about things at work. I mean, when you put it in perspective, and you know that your family is basically number one. Some other character things, I just watch what I say. My son, one day in the car, I remember I must have been getting mad, and he said, "Daddy, who's an idiot?" And obviously I was upset with someone cutting me off, and I can't believe I said that. And so yeah, just kind of being really careful about what I say, how I deal with my anger. And it's okay to be angry, but you need to show your children appropriate ways to deal with your anger. I think the biggest thing that God has taught me is just the father's heart. Like, I can really, really understand that now. My son, when he was in the toddler age, I mean, he had some very strong-willed. We had some really big battles. And I remember sometimes being in his room and him hitting things and telling, "I hate you, Daddy," and just losing control. And then at the end, when you help him process and calm down, he'd come and hug me. And it just reminded me of God and how that works with him. Like, sometimes we think God's never going to forgive us. He's not going to feel the same. But no matter what we really do, he's always waiting for us to run back into his arms and just ask for forgiveness. So I think the father's heart, the parable of the prodigal son really hits home now. When I read that before, like, oh, that's a nice story. But now you can really see, no matter what your kids do, you're always going to be there. You're always going to love them. You're always going to forgive them.
Yeah, so good. Vic?
Yeah, I think we've all used this Bible verse, Proverbs 22:6, starts children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. It all comes down to what everyone has said today, being a role model. One of the things that I've learned is that I have to constantly exhibit the role that I want my children to see in their dad. Whether it's in making life decisions in terms of career. Like I said, my dad passed when I was young, so I made lots of decisions along the way, being very careful that the consequences of what I'm doing may come back and bite me. I'll just, for example, if I have to make a decision to go somewhere that I shouldn't go, I know that those are things that, as a person, I'm making a decision as a young age. For them, I want them to basically see that role model in me. We talked recently about inequalities, right? That's what's going on in the communities. And as a dad, again, I want them to know how to behave when those situations occur in their lives.
Yeah.
Whether it's driving, being stopped by a cop, how they should behave, they should interact with the police officer.
Right.
I want them to know how they should behave. Like you said, if somebody cuts you off on the road, living in the U.S. before, I know how easy it is that someone could basically come down and shoot you because you basically cut them off the road.
Yeah.
Whether it's in decisions about even friendship, when they should do something, when they shouldn't do certain things. So those are the opportunities that we have as dad to continue to show our children what they should do
Yeah.
in every situation.
Last question that we have is, what are some tips you can share regarding disciplining your kids and communicating with them when they are struggling in their behavior? Now, this is a loaded question. It's a big question because we've all had to look at that. How do we discipline our kids? How do we help them through processing things? And Vic, we're going to start back with you again on this last one.
Right, and the Bible verse I want to use for this one is James 1:19. Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. You must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. For my children, I'm just going to talk about communication first. When it's time to communicate, it's a moment to drop everything. If I'm in my office in the basement working, and my daughter did that today, comes into the office and I basically turn off the screen because it's a time for me to listen. There's been stories of parents that would their children goes to them to have a communication about something, and they said, "Oh, I'm busy," and then the consequences of that was bad, and they're coming back to themselves to say, I wish I'd taken time to listen to what this boy had to say. So in terms of communication, I basically put everything away, unless, of course, if it's very important that I say, look, can we talk about this some other time? But I still want to know what that is, so that at least I can gauge the urgency of it. Yeah. But for my wife, I would say that. Oh, sorry. Back to our discussion of discipline. I think you discipline in love. For us, the Bible verse that I would use there is, Father, do not provoke your children to anger. That's Ephesians 6:4. Bring them up in discipline and instructions of the Lord. So we make sure that we use a rule-based approach, setting God's priorities and setting consequences for everything that they do.
So they know priorities and consequences exist.
Absolutely.
So if they step over the line,
Correct.
they know what to expect.
Oh, yeah. It is important that we will discipline them in love, and not just allow everything to pass.
Right. Samson.
Yeah, thank you. For me, it's very important to start talking to children right from when they were very, very young. That's the tactics I use. Probably because I thought Alex we are the same age, or Evelyn. I talk to them a lot. I never spank any of my kids. I never. My children has never disobeyed me. And when I discipline them, I discipline them with love and let them know the reason why. And they still love me because the way things are being handled. So I think it's always good to talk to children as if they are adults. Even when you think they don't understand, they will understand.
Yeah.
They will understand, you do this, you can't do this, because of this, because of that. I remember when my kids are small, when I said this area is no. They won't go there. And I never spank them. I would go and see some of my friends later on in the year, and they will stuff damages in their homes. I say, who did it? They say, oh, my kids. Like, in my house, I never lock the door. I leave everything open for this case, but they will never go there because they have their own area. You know, those up till now, you know, by talking to them is very important, I believe. It's very, very important. And up to today, I still have my coffee time with my kids. There were days, Evelyn, we will meet at coffee shop. She's married. We meet, we talk, and we still talk about life. And so I give her a little advice. She may say, oh, no, then, but you will see her doing it. So it's very, very important. Let them talk to them and let them know the reason why you are correcting them.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important.
At a very young age.
At a very young age.
Yeah, I love it. A lot of people don't think about children being able to understand young, but they do.
They do.
Ron.
Yeah, very similar actually. We have talked to the boys as adults since they were old enough to hear, and as they get older and the conversations evolve, then they're already used to to being spoken to like an adult, not like a child. So that's definitely a big one. Another big one for us has been setting boundaries. So again, kind of like what Samson said, some things are on limits, some things are off limits. But as far as disciplining goes, I can honestly say that I don't think actually I've done much in the way of what I would consider disciplining other than through conversation and communication and setting expectations, managing expectations. But my boys are awesome, and they do respect us and our authority, even though they do things that we don't know about sometimes. They still they're a pleasure to have in our home. And that leads me to my last point, which is probably the most important point in the whole disciplinary conversation, and that is they need to know that you love them no matter what. Mm-hmm. You always have their back. You always have their best interests. Because if they know that, and they know that you truly care about their well-being and about their future, then even though it may not make sense to them, or they may not even appreciate the direction you're trying to encourage them to go in, they know that it's a good decision and it's a good direction. They may choose not to accept it or to do their own thing, which is totally fine, but knowing that they have that grounding in love makes everything so much easier.
Yeah. Something my parents told me and my brother when we were very young was, no matter where you go in life, no matter what you do, if you completely mess up, we love you, and you can always come home.
Yeah.
There was always that unconditional love. Even though we might completely mess up, you can always come home.
So, Pastor Mark, can I add to that? Last year, when I was driving, my wife and I was driving my son to the airport. Before I left the house, I went to the basement and sent an email to him. And then in the car, we had the same conversation. I told them that no matter what, I don't care how bad it is. I don't care if you did it, if somebody else lied, or no matter what the situation is, I want you to know that the first person that you need to call is me. And it's very important because what it does is it lets them know that at least there's somebody that got my back. Yeah. So you're not judging them. It could have been something that really, requires you to be very angry at them. But because they have that open line of communication with you, and you know what, that happened several times. And I'm the first person to get that call. I am so thankful I wrote that email.
Yeah, I think it's so cool, so key that kids know. Yeah, we know you can make mistakes.
Absolutely.
But I'm here. No matter how bad it is. Chris, we'll get last one on this.
Okay. I guess, first of all, I would just encourage people, if you weren't raised by good parents, or your parents weren't kind to you, you didn't have that good relationship or good parenting, I would encourage you to, educate yourself, go read up on it, because we tend to default to what our parents did for us. Mm-hmm. I'm very fortunate that my parents, looking back at it, they were awesome. I mean, they had rules, they could be strict, but they were very flexible as well. And as I got older, they really trusted me. And when they gave me that trust, I mean, of course, I rebelled sometimes, but if I did rebel, I felt guilty and would usually stop. And then, I would be like, no, I can't do that. And I know for dads, being a dad, I mean, there's so much research out there that shows that if kids don't have a dad around, the chances of them committing crime or being involved in the wrong things, it just skyrockets. So, not to simplify it, but for dads, just being there is such a huge thing, being consistent, showing up. I actually did read a book, which is rare for me, because as I kind of alluded to before, my son's very strong-willed. But in reading that book, it encouraged parents not to stifle that, because when we see kids who are strong-willed, we see that as not good. But adults who are strong-willed, you think about if they're going to defend their faith, and they need that. So every kid is different, but I think kind of everyone kind of touched on it, having rules, expectations, and relationship is the big thing. Same with our relationship with God. I mean, relationship, if you have that relationship, then the obedience, I think, will follow.
Yeah. Well, thank you, guys. We're so good. And like I said, between all four of you, the perfect dad exists on this stage. And as I read through all of your answers that you had sent me earlier, I was just like, oh, boy, my wife's going to make me do some of these things. And I probably should. Dads, let me encourage you. As has been said, none of us are perfect. We all have a lot still to learn. And I believe it is a process. From the moment we have a child until we die, we're learning how to be a good father. The best example has been said is God and his father heart towards us. That he would give everything he could possibly give so that he could have the relationship with us that he desires to have. He loves you. Your kids love you, even if they don't say it enough. And we love you. We want to see you be the best dad you can possibly be. So in the future, dads, for men's ministry stuff, make sure you jump in, and we'll be having some stuff going on for dads, hopefully in the fall. And how to be a good dad will be one of those things. God bless you, and we will see you soon.